These days, when I tell people that I'm an anthropologist interested in the intersections of youth, space, and belonging, I almost always regret it as soon as the words leave my mouth. This is because the questions that follow immediately are often along the lines of, oh, is that the study of ants? Or, interesting, do you want to be an astronaut? These are very logical questions if you ask me. First, they tell you how little interested people are generally in the field of anthropologist, which, by the way, is the study of social life, and that I should probably find another line of work. Secondly, of course, if you go about telling people that you're working on space, the first thing that comes to mind is outer space. It's not rocket science. But against my better judgments, I'm sticking with the short bio. Anthropologist working on the intersections of youth, space, and belonging, because it's relevant for my talk today. Over the last year, I've been doing fieldwork in Lagos, trying to understand how young residents, particularly the underprivileged, make and sustain lives in the context of the spatial inequalities of the city of Lagos. So simply put, how do young people make space for themselves in a sprawling but highly unequal city like Lagos? What kinds of life can they make with the spaces they inhabit, the spaces they sometimes have to borrow, and what does their resilience mean for how we understand the city? So to answer these questions, I've spent a lot of time with young students, unemployed, underemployed, and informally employed young people on campuses and on the streets, at bars, at gatherings, etc., inhabiting the spaces with them, asking them questions about how they make claims to these spaces and what experiences they share with others in the process of finding belonging in these spaces. And I'm here to tell you about a wonderful set of people. The theme is out of the shadows, right? So it's a demographic that's often neglected, even vilified, but not any less potent in the shaping of the character of Lagos, or perhaps any city for that matter. So, although I sat with many people in many spaces, I'm going to share the story of just one set of people with whom I spent the most time. And it is my hope that in talking to you about this vibrant space that these young people have made for themselves, you will be inspired to think more about the contributions that afferently displaced people make and can still make to the shaping and the growth of cities. So welcome to Obadina. It's a street in the environs of the campuses of the University of Lagos and Yaba Tech. The street is a small stretch of dusty tarred road, slightly wider than most others in the area, marked prominently by a local government office, a school, some houses, but flanked mostly by shops made of brittle wood and bamboo scaffolding. I found Obadina by accident. I'd basically just been walking around in the neighborhood in search of places where young people gather, where they hang out. And someone I explained my curiosities to said, look at that street. You know, the sign of the street name was sticking out from the junction. And they said, I don't know what's there, but I always see guys going there. The street didn't look like much when I got there. But I found a standalone black building with raised windows and a single open door. So many young people, mostly men, either enter or gather around the building. The outside of the building, the walls of the building are made of bamboo, and there's a sticker on the wall that reads, "This land belongs to the University of Lagos." I soon found out that this was a regular hangout spot for guys in the neighborhood. Some of them flocked the space in the evenings to play snooker, watch football matches, or just sit around and chat until it gets late. Some of the other men lived together in a tiny shack just behind the building. So they're always coming out to hang around or going inside to participate in the social activities. One of the first questions I asked the manager of the space was why bamboo was a choice building material. And he said, yes, this is Unilag land. The whole place used to be bush before we cleared it. They can allow you to build on it before they come to collect it. You can build, but not with concrete blocks, so that it can be easy to collect when they are ready. That's why they are using bamboo. So I've come to understand bamboo as a material that symbolizes accepted temporariness and uncertainty, one that could be ruptured or flattened to the ground at any time. But it is so many other things too for the people who use the space. It means flexibility, friendship, a recognition of the shared conditions of deprivation, and the will to make things work under those conditions. My second point of curiosity was, of course, what were the personal stories of bamboo frequenters? And one of them was this guy. We call him Ashake, who grew up in his family house in the neighborhood with his grandmother, mother, and siblings. But last year, his home was marked for reclamation because it did not meet housing standards set by the state government. But even when it happened that the city developers ran a bulldozer through their house, Ashake did not feel completely displaced. He has always moved easily around the streets, made a life by understanding the need to be mobile. It was from moving, sometimes dancing around the streets, that he earned his name, Ashake, like the music icon, for his style and his palpable love for Afrobeats. The gatherings at Bamboo are hardly ever planned, so one guy from the next street shows up with a small Bluetooth speaker. Another guy with a playlist featuring Sheyi Vibes, Young John, Ashake, and others. And still another guy with a betting slip for the Chelsea-Liverpool match. It is often an accidental convergence of moving people with movable things that then sometimes consolidate into enduring relationships. Users of this space gather around a snooker table and play a point game. Or if they're not playing, they loudly spectate, tease each other, get one another upset from excessive teasing, and then share their vulnerabilities after the calm. When I asked one of the regulars of the space why people come there, he had said, "Here you can come and everyone is sharing. We'll just come together here and say, bro, how far now? I don't see anything since so." Then we are sharing things, sharing ideas. Where else do you want to see that one? Effectively, uncertain as the bamboo building was designed to be, it became a space to facilitate encounters, connections, and to foster resource management. Not the textbook kind, but in the spirit of what the late Mohbad had described in a familiar song as street orientation. By coming together and inscribing their presence in public spaces in the streets where they don't own, spaces that can be reclaimed at any time, these young men claim their right to belong in the city. Because Obadina is situated in an area dense with tertiary institutions, the encroachment of new housing rushed to meet the market for student accommodation strikes you once you walk through the streets. This means that there is always something being built in every corner, and as a direct consequence, something is always being torn down. For the overwhelming population of young people like my friends here, who don't have the means to have concrete forms of housing, they rely on mobile infrastructures, from provisional housing arrangements to movable benches on the streets and even mattresses, to portable speakers to mobile phones. They also rely on mobile immaterialities too, like mobile friendships, malleable aspirations, and importantly, a flexible sense of belonging where family is not defined by biological reproduction, but co-presence and shared burdens. So what is the import of all this? Again, most of the time when we think of the glory of the city, what immediately comes to mind is generally the magnificent infrastructure, the opulent personalities, whether old money or new money. We imagine the Lekki-Ikoyi link bridge. You probably recognize this from every new Nollywood movie. We imagine Atlantic City, Davido, Olamide, Otedola, the Okoyas. Little do we remember people like the Obadinians, who in their small means and in many ways are the literal movers of the city. Yes, because they move ever so nimbly within and with the city, and because they exist and eke out a living in every nook and cranny of the city, they are perhaps equally potent as shapers of the city, which in any case must reckon with them at virtually every turn. I'm drawing attention to what we might learn from these young inhabitants of the city, how they are transforming the possibilities of belonging in the context of uncertain livelihoods. Streets like Obadina are replicated across the city and across cities everywhere. Yet we're often socialized to, at best, ignore their significance, or at worst, look down on them as spaces of idle encounter. But far from being idle, the provisional encounters between young men in public spaces in the city and young people in general are necessary and are generative of culture, of creativity, of friendship, and humane coexistence. In our contemporary political culture, attitudes to belonging, both in the sense of having a rightful place and having ties to others, are still largely characterized by essentializing factors like citizenship, ethnicity, biological kinship, and economic wealth. Yet, in watching how young city dwellers enter into provisional but meaningful encounters with one another, we might be inspired to think about a different kind of belonging, a model of belonging that's more fitting for our times, a practice-based model. A practice-based model suggests that belonging is made by doing things, by sharing things with others, from concrete material things like food, shelter, to the more immaterial things like ideas, cultures, values. In this model, belonging is not tied to fixed identities, where one comes from, or what one owns. Rather, it is forged on the go, in the everyday practice of showing who one can be in relation to others at all times, but especially in moments of crisis. One early evening, as the skies began to darken into a crimson hue, I sat with one of my friends at Obadina, just at the entrance of Bamboo, and asked him, a little out of curiosity and out of concern, "So, what happens when Unila comes to collect their land?" He smiled and asked me to walk with him to the next street, where some houses and shacks had already been bulldozed and razed to a mess of half blocks and sediments of concrete. He pointed to a movable bench, sat just atop the rubble of one of the demolished houses. There, some of his friends were seated together, sharing drinks, bobbing their heads to some new track by Kiss Daniel, chattering away as if they were sitting in their own rooms. They have been coming, he told me, but we are still here. Thank you.
Thank you.